The story is now complete. The exciting story is just beginning. Can you not be angry? Liu Ryan was clearly on a business trip to Shenzhen, but ended up being quarantined in a hotel in Sanya. However, her ex-boyfriend was also among them. Tomorrow is the wedding day. She just told me that she can't come back. More than 20 days later, she appeared in front of me. She said she wants to hold the wedding again. I smiled and shook the wedding ring on my hand. Sorry, Miss Liu, I'm already married. When Liu Ryan called me, I was making the final preparations for my wedding. There was a lot of noise outside. My buddy Lin Yi and my cousin Yading were arguing about how to tie the balloons to look better. I smiled and turned on the speaker. I asked softly, "Did you come back from Shenzhen?" "A week ago," Liu Ryan told me. There was a long-delayed cooperation project in Shenzhen. She needed to go and discuss it. During the quarantine in Shenzhen, she had been very irritable because this project was put on hold. Now that it was lifted, naturally, I had no reason to stop her. She assured me she would definitely be back within 3 days, just in time for us to spend Valentine's Day together. But 3 days turned into 5 days. 5 days turned into now. Liu Ryan fell silent for a moment. She apologized in a guilty voice. "Yi Chen, I'm sorry, I might not be able to come back for a while. Can we postpone the wedding? I'll have my parents explain things to the relatives. When I get back, we can hold an even grander one. Is that okay?" My smile froze on my face. Without asking for an explanation from her end, a hoarse male voice followed closely behind, which clarified the doubts in my mind. "Ruyan, we still have to stay quarantined in Sanya for a while longer. I should have known better than to let you come with me." The next second, the call abruptly ended. The high-priced photographer I'd hired to document everything ... stood beside me, camera in hand. His gaze carried a mix of awkwardness and sympathetic pity. "Mr. Yi, do you still want to continue?" I lowered my head, trying to calm my chaotic emotions. Outside, Lin Yi and Yading's playful quarrels persisted. I clenched my fists, urging myself to regain composure quickly. Awkwardly, I forced a smile at the photographer. "Sorry, can you wait for a moment? I need to make a call." That man's voice from earlier was too familiar. I needed to confirm if my suspicion was correct. I dialed the number ... The call connected almost immediately. On the other end, Su Qianshan's usual lively and cheerful tone came through. "Oh, the groom suddenly remembers to call me? Have you finally figured things out and decided to set things right? I need to ask you something. Where did you last run into Maazuru?" "In Shenzhen ... Why are you suddenly asking about him? Don't tell me Liu Ruyan ran off with him?" I slightly hunched over. It felt like someone had punched me hard in the chest. It hurt. Turns out, her previous irritability and short temper weren't because the business deal was stuck. It was because she was worried about her ex-boyfriend. My eyes stung with the threat of tears. With a hoarse voice, I whispered, "Su Qianshan, you once said if Liu Ruyan gave up on me ... I could consider giving you a chance. Does that still stand?" Before I could finish my sentence, I heard the sound of glass shattering on the other end. Su Qianshan cursed quietly under her breath. Damn it, she really ran off with Maazuru? No, it's me who doesn't want her anymore. So, are you coming to me or not? A notification popped up at the top of my phone. Liu Ruyan had just sent me a message a few minutes ago. The content was brief. "Be good and wait for me to come back. I'll explain everything then." Just days before our wedding, she went to Sanya with her ex-boyfriend to celebrate Valentine's Day, and now she expects me to wait for her return, without any surprises. Even if the date changes, the story of Yi Zhengwei's grandson being stood up at his wedding likes to bully a little boy. It's because she likes him. Turns out it's true. Su Qianshan's long overdue confession made me want to run away. A week later, I moved out of the apartment and went straight to live at the company. Home was definitely out of the question. I was afraid of being interrogated by my parents. When I dragged my suitcase out of the apartment, would become the talk of the town. Su Qianchen hadn't come home from work yet. She'd been busy preparing for a project bid, leading overtime efforts, coming back late every day. I think part of the reason was to give me space to think. Despite her seemingly carefree attitude, she handles things with incredible thoughtfulness. The company has a separate break room with full Wi-Fi coverage. I can't afford that humiliation, and all utilities included. I sent a WeChat message to Lin Yi, telling him that I had moved out. Not long after the message was sent, Su Qianchen's call came through. Her voice was a bit hoarse. Did you move out? Why did you leave? Did I do something wrong? I remained silent, and her voice grew softer. And neither can my family, ending with a hint of grievance. Am I really that hard for you to accept? I replied, no, I just want to be alone. And stay quiet for a while. Yi Chen, don't feel pressured. From the moment I started liking you, I never expected anything in return from you. When you feel better, I'll be waiting for you at home. I knew it wasn't fair to her. After hanging up, I pressed my hand against my chest. My heart was racing a bit. The person most thrilled about me moving out was Liu Ryan. He started showing up at our company every few days, but I had him turned away each time, not being able to see me. He began sending gifts every day. I told the front desk to throw them all out. A clean break, but my tone softened slightly. No need for any lingering mess. In the days that followed, Su Qianchen stopped contacting me, as if she had vanished from my world. While I felt relieved, there was also a tinge of disappointment. I was hesitating whether to reach out to her. When Liu's mom called, her voice was tearful as she asked, Yi Chen, could you come to the hospital? Help me this once. Xiaoyan was in a car accident. He just regained consciousness and keeps asking to see you. After the wedding, I won't place any restrictions on you. We can sign a prenuptial agreement. If you ever want a divorce, I won't take a penny of what's yours. You've always liked that set of Song Dynasty Riao Celadon plates, right? I'll give it to you as well. Su Qianchen pondered for a moment, and for once in a rare serious tone, she asked, are you sure about this? No regrets? I'll wait for you to marry me tomorrow. After hanging up the call, I sent a message back to Liu Ruyan. Inform your relatives on your side. I'll handle things on my end myself. Then I opened the family group chat. Liu Ruyan and her ex-boyfriend are quarantined in Sanya. Who knows when she'll be back? Tell the hotel to change the bride's name to Su Qianchen. The wedding will proceed as planned tomorrow. These two messages landed like bombs, and the group chat exploded in an instant. Yading burst into my room, nearly knocking the door off its hinges. She rushed over, asking, bro, what's going on? How dare she treat my brother like this? That scumbag Liu Ruyan ditched you and stood you up? I'm calling her right now to give her a piece of my mind. I gestured to the photographer to keep going while gently calming her down. No need, I'm changing brides before the wedding. The one losing face is the Liu family, not us. Inform everyone to keep this matter under wraps. Make sure Liu Ruyan doesn't find out until the wedding tomorrow. Yading looked at me, still somewhat bewildered, and asked, why, bro? Because I want to publicly slap her in the face. Liu Ruyan, Su Qianchen, and I grew up together as childhood friends in the same military compound. But those two never got along from the start. Liu Ruyan was the epitome of the perfect child in everyone's eyes. She excelled in her studies, was methodical, beautiful, and gracious. As for Su Qianchen, according to her grandpa, she was an untamed little spirit. It wasn't enough for her to cause trouble on her own. She always dragged me along with her. In her words, since her grandpa couldn't bear to punish me, her own punishment would be lighter by association. But she forgot one thing. Her grandpa's reluctance didn't matter. Punishments still came. From childhood till now, I was never spared from getting scolded alongside her. Still, it built a deep bond of camaraderie between us. My affection for Liu Ruyan was an open secret. Just how open was it? Even our families would joke about us constantly. Before meeting Ma Zuru, Liu Ruyan never objected to anything. Whether it was her sticking close to me, or others teasingly calling her my little wife, Su Qianxin would often grab my face and shake it side to side, demanding, "Make this young lady happy. How much water do you have sloshing around in that brain of yours?" To actually fall for Liu Ruyan? That phony and scheming girl. If you've got water in your brain, fine. But you're also blind at such a young age. How can you not see that I'm obviously prettier than her? Indeed, Su Qianxin's appearance was superior to Liu Ruyan's. At 1.7 meters tall, her figure was exceptionally balanced thanks to years of yoga practice. Her physique was remarkably well-proportioned. Her looks were flawless, truly beyond reproach. But her personality remained as lively as ever. Several film companies sought her out, promising that she would become an overnight sensation. I know at least 3 that approached her, but she had no interest in entering the entertainment industry. Her only ambition was to follow in her father's footsteps, to become a relentless capitalist. Even if she were interested, her stern grandfather would never allow it. When she was 6 years old, she once told me that in the future, she would build me a grand house made of gold, one even more luxurious than Emperor Wu of Han's Golden Palace. If she hadn't been yanking on my collar when she said it, I might have actually felt a little moved. Maybe it's because I've known Su Qianxin for so long. She either bullies me or drags me into mischief. Our relationship is more like that of brothers. On the other hand, Liu Ruyan, though cold by nature, was always gentle and understanding with me. She was always patient, no matter what. Ask yourself what teenage boy could resist a girl like that? I always thought Liu Ruyan liked me too, until Ma Zuru showed up. The first time I met Ma Zuru was at my 18th birthday celebration. Even though my grandfather was known for his integrity, on that special day, our home was still filled with influential figures from business and politics. As I descended the stairs looking dashing in my suit, I happened to see Ruyan linking arms with an extremely handsome young man. Amid the hushed whispers ... under the watchful gaze of her parents, she confidently walked over with him to where I stood. With complete composure, she held his hand and approached me. Handing me a gift, she said, "Happy birthday, Yi Chen. Let me introduce you to my boyfriend, Ma Zuru," she said, turning her head slightly. She looked at the guy next to her with a tenderness I had never seen before. It was a gaze filled with deep affection. "This is the little birthday star I told you about, my brother Yi Chen." At that moment, my mind went completely blank. I stood there, holding the gift, frozen in place. Thankfully, Su Qianxin pulled me away just in time. She took me up to the rooftop terrace. I curled up in a corner, bawling my eyes out. I couldn't understand why, when it was supposed to be mutual affection ... did it suddenly turn into a one-sided delusion? Why had she never objected to being called my little wife before? Su Qianxin, likely annoyed by my crying, gently nudged me with the tip of her shoe, saying, "Hey ... stop crying already. Be a man. If Liu Ruyan's given up on you, you might as well consider me instead." Back then, I looked up, tears still blurring my vision, and replied to her, "Thanks, but no thanks." She just shrugged nonchalantly. "Well, if you ever change your mind, just remember you can come to me. After all, we're brothers, right? As long as I'm still single ... that offer stands." What I thought was just a comforting remark unexpectedly became a reality years later. I'm not one to cling desperately to someone who doesn't want me. When Liu Ruyan brought her boyfriend to my coming-of-age party, it didn't take a genius to figure out what that meant. I cut off all the ambiguous ties between us, retreating to the role of the brother she'd always spoken of. I watched her from afar. For the sake of Ma Zuru, she acted recklessly. The once calm and gentle girl turned impulsive, just like any typical love-struck young woman. She even became anxious over trivial things for his sake. Liu Ruyan's grandfather and father both held high-ranking positions in the military. They had always hoped Liu Ruyan would follow a political path. But Ma Zuru's father was a drunkard, a gambler, and deeply in debt. With a family background like that, he was never going to be accepted by the Liu family. Aunt Liu held my hand and told me, "Yi Chen, our family will never accept that pretty-faced boy. You're the only one that both your uncle and I have approved of as our son-in-law. Ruyan is just temporarily confused. I'll make sure to set her straight." We all knew deep down whether it was just confusion or not, and I had no intention of interfering in their relationship, so I declined Aunt Liu's request. But she was determined to tear apart that loving couple, to force them to break up. She even resorted to threatening her own life. Exasperated beyond measure, Liu Ruyan directed all her anger at me. After Aunt Liu was rushed to the hospital again for slitting her wrists, and ended up in the surgery room, Liu Ruyan, with red-rimmed eyes, slumped against the white wall behind me. "I've done as you wished. I broke up with Ma Zuru. Will you be satisfied if I agree to be with you? Please, just stop my mom from tormenting herself any further." It was the only time I ever saw her completely break down, like a rabbit that had been trapped for too long, struggling countless times, eventually giving in, though unwilling. She was forced to compromise. But the truth is, I was innocent too. My relationship with Liu Ruyan hit rock bottom. Since the university wasn't far from home, I had been commuting during my college years. But to avoid them, I packed my things and moved into the dorms. Aunt Liu clearly hadn't expected Liu Ruyan to distance herself, afraid it might strain the relationship between our families. She quieted down for quite some time. Once things settled, Liu Ruyan came to find me many times, trying to mend our relationship, but I always used being busy as an excuse to turn her down. And so, this stalemate dragged on for more than 4 months, until it was finally broken by a car accident. Liu Ruyan probably got distracted while driving, and crashed into a roadside utility pole. When I got the news and rushed to the hospital, Liu and Mazuru were both sitting on the bench outside the surgery room, their eyes swollen from crying. The red light above the operating room door was painfully bright. The surgery lasted over 4 hours, followed by a week of monitoring in the ICU. Liu Ruyan's life was saved, but both her leg and arm were severely injured, which might leave her disabled. Even then, the Liu family still refused to accept Mazuru. After staying by Liu Ruyan's side for over a month, Mazuru decided to break up with her. He was smart. With his looks, there was no shortage of wealthy girls chasing after him. He didn't need to stick around in a relationship where he wasn't welcomed by her family, and where she might now be seen as damaged goods. There was no point in wasting time. Mazuru left. Liu Ruyan's temper grew worse and worse, and Liu cried her eyes out every day. Whenever I didn't have classes, I would visit the hospital to keep her company. Su Qianzhen berated me for being foolish and spineless, but having grown up together. Before Mazuru came into the picture, Liu Ruyan had always treated me well. Now that she was like this, I couldn't bring myself to abandon her. It had nothing to do with love. I accompanied Liu Ruyan through 2 long years as seasons changed, through surgery after surgery, and follow-up examinations, one after another. The process was agonizingly slow, but in the end, it was worth it. Liu Ruyan eventually recovered. She even treated me to a lavish meal to celebrate, and used the opportunity to confess her feelings to me. I turned her down, told her, "I don't need you to repay me, nor do I need you to offer yourself to me in gratitude." Later, she spent 3 years convincing me that she truly loved me. But when Mazuru reappeared, he shattered the 3-year dream she had so carefully woven for me. Su Qianzhen showed up, just as I had changed back into my regular clothes. My makeup was still on. There was a flash of admiration in her eyes, but she quickly suppressed it and said, "Grab your ID and household registration book. Let's go." Confused, I asked, "Where are we going?" "To get our marriage certificate, of course. We shouldn't wait any longer, or who knows, my precious Song Dynasty Royale plate might sprout legs and run away." She curled her lips into a smile, clearly in a great mood. Under the curious and gossiping gazes of our friends and family, I followed Su Qianzhen out the door. It wasn't until a red booklet was placed in my hands that I felt a surreal sense of disbelief. Originally, Liu Ruyan and I had planned to get our marriage certificate on Valentine's Day, but because of her business trip, because she was vacationing with her ex in Sanya, we postponed it until after the wedding. Yet, in less than a day, I ended up getting the certificate anyway, but with a different wife altogether. After receiving the certificate, Su Qianxin and I went to a jewelry store to pick out a pair of matching diamond rings. Time was tight, so we couldn't have anything custom-made. Just wear this for now. We can get you a unique one later. No need, this one's perfect, she replied. Su Qianxin tried it on and it fit her perfectly. I awkwardly said, Qianxin, I'm sorry to put you through this. Can we keep our marriage certificate a secret for now? I'm worried that if Liu Ruyan finds out. Brows furrowed slightly, and her once cheerful face darkened. What do you mean? Are you planning to reconcile with her? I waved my hand in front of her face. Up close. The light refracted by the diamond made me squint slightly. Where is it? I just wanted to remain in front of him. He rested his chin, pondering for a moment. Tomorrow, the wedding issue will surely be impossible to hide. Whether the first tell him or not doesn't make much of a difference. No, it won't. He'll just think I'm throwing a tantrum. Reaching this point today, I can't be carefree and magnanimous. Half a year ago, during a routine gathering of childhood friends in the courtyard, Su Qianxin toyed with her wine glass, casually saying, I went on a business trip a few days ago and met Mazu Ri. The whole room shifted their gazes to me and Liu Ruyan sitting together. Back then, Liu Ruyan's passionate affair was something we all witnessed. He just straightened up a little, with a calm gaze, continuing to help me with wrapping dumplings. If he had told me back then that he couldn't let go, I would have let him pursue his true love without hesitation and offered my blessings. But he didn't. In recent years, I never doubted Liu Ruyan's feelings for me. The thoughtfulness shown in the trivialities of daily life. Even the best acting couldn't fake it. But his heart doesn't only hold me. I was just one of his two choices, and the one chosen later. It would have been fine if I was just an option. But what he absolutely shouldn't have done was to stand me up on something so important. That was trampling on the dignity of our family. When you think about it, our family might even be closer to the Liu family. Two old men crawled out of the same trench with a life and death bond. My dad and Su Qianxin's dad. When they were young, they even discussed venturing into business together. Compared to Liu Ruyan, they always favored Su Qianxin more. My mom has told me more than once that Liu Ruyan's thoughts run too deep. I can't fully grasp him. And now, with him making such a foolish mistake, although my family thinks I acted a bit impulsively, they didn't say anything to blame me. As for the Liu family, setting aside their friendship, Grandpa Su has 5 sons and 8 granddaughters. Their entire family craves a boy desperately. According to my grandmother, when I was little, they even secretly considered how feasible it would be to bring me over to raise as their own. Although snatching a child was out of the question, I spent most of my childhood at the Liu family's home. They genuinely treated me as one of their own. Naturally, they'd be happy to have me as their son-in-law. Growing up in the same compound, the three of us shared nearly 80 to 90% of the same friends. So it was inevitable someone would tell Liu Ruyan. By the time his parents arrived, Su Qianxin and I had already exchanged rings. Maybe it was out of respect for my grandfather and Grandpa Su, or maybe it was for the sake of saving face, but they didn't make a scene. With grim expressions, they attended the ceremony. From early morning, I had handed my phone over to Lin Yi for safekeeping. All the calls from Liu Ruyan were blocked by him. During the toasts, my mom found a chance to pull me aside alone. Xiaoyang couldn't return from his business trip. She said, "It's true he's at fault, but you've really gone too far today. I know you're angry at him, but marriage isn't a game. How could you drag Qianxin into this just because you're angry? What will all our relatives and friends think?" While the guests are still here, you should hurry out and explain. Wait for Xiaoyan to return. I'll help you set her straight. And make him apologize to you. I politely interrupted her. Liu Ryan isn't on a business trip. He's in Sonia celebrating Valentine's Day with Ma Zuri and got quarantined. Liu's mom was frozen on the spot by my words, her well-maintained face filled with disbelief. I gave her a small smile, then turned and walked back to the wedding hall. Passing by the ladies' restroom, I happened to overhear Su Qianshan on the phone. Your husband, huh? Then why don't you show up at the wedding? If you come over now, I'll admit he's your husband. Her tone lifted slightly. There was no mistaking the sarcasm. Everything was finally over. It was already past 10 p.m. I took back my phone and scrolled through it. I couldn't even count how many calls Liu Ryan had made. From top to bottom, it was all missed calls from him. I was just about to check his messages when another call came through. Without hesitation, I hung up, blocked him a few minutes later, and then Su Qianshan's phone started ringing nearby. I glanced over. Of course, it was also Liu Ryan calling. I reached over and ended the call for her as well. Right then, Su Qianshan came out after her shower, drying her still dripping hair with a towel, wearing a creamy white nightgown, her figure subtly revealed in all the right places. Surprised? Unexpected? She teased with a smile. I swallowed hard. Knowing she's been working out for years, I figured she had a nice body. But it turned out to be even better than I imagined. Why did you come out like that? Go put on some proper clothes. Su Qianshan paused her movements, letting out a low chuckle from her throat. My dear big brother, it's already past 10 p.m. I'm at home, just finished showering and ready to sleep. What kind of clothes do you expect me to wear? Right, makes sense. I scratched my head, thinking for a long time, mumbling hesitantly. You should stay pure for your future husband. That's unnecessary. I have no intention of divorcing you. I don't want to be beaten to death by my old man. If I still want to stay alive, forget about divorce. Given how much Grandpa Sue likes me, what she said could really happen. A divorce that couldn't happen, plus losing a Song Ruyao Celadon plate. That's something I spent a fortune on at a Sotheby's auction. I acted to rashly celebrate their wedding night with joy and intimacy. But I just want to be good roommates with Su Qianshan, not disturbing each other. Blushing, I grabbed a blanket and dashed to the guest bedroom, officially starting my cohabitation with Su Qianshan. No, it's just a shared living arrangement. After showering, I came out, only to realize I couldn't find the hairdryer. I had no choice but to borrow it from her room. I lightly knocked on the creamy white door a few times. The door quickly opened from the inside. She was slightly stunned. A blush rapidly spread across her face. Su Qianshan was only wearing a silk nightgown. The fabric in front was partly transparent. I stared straight ahead, took the hairdryer from her, and quickly walked away, too scared to get closer. I decided to avoid her for a couple of days, but she didn't give me the chance to avoid her at all. Just over half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. Come out. It's time to eat. I decided to stubbornly refuse. I'm not eating, I'm not hungry, since I had been toasting drinks all afternoon, and then dealing with the wedding night pranks. I barely had much to eat the entire day. I thought I could handle it, but as soon as she called out, my stomach started growling loudly. Su Qianshan's voice remained calm and steady. I ordered sweet and sour ribs, fried shrimp, Coca-Cola chicken wings, mapo tofu, spicy stir-fried lotus root, sour and spicy shredded potatoes, and braised eggplant. The next second, I opened the door. Under the temptation of delicious food, all my embarrassment, pride, and dignity flew out the window. The dishes from that restaurant tasted amazing. I couldn't hold back, and ended up eating two full bowls of rice. My stomach was round and full. After finishing the meal, she stood up to clear the table, wanting to stretch a bit. I said, "Let me handle the cleanup." She didn't refuse politely, simply carried the leftovers to the kitchen, and laughed, saying, "Then you can do the dishes." I rubbed my overstuffed belly, agreed with a sure, and headed to the kitchen. As soon as I turned on the faucet, a warm body pressed up against my back. Suchianshin wrapped her arms around my waist, putting an apron on me. After tying the knot, she leaned in close and casually whispered in my ear, "Not bad, little temptress." I couldn't help but blush fiercely. This troublemaker dared to tease me. The next morning, when I finished getting ready and stepped out of my room, Suchianshin was setting down two bowls of porridge on the dining table. When she saw me, she smiled and said, "I was just about to call you." She was wearing a sky blue halter apron, with her long hair casually falling over her forehead, adding a touch of youthful innocence. Bathed in the morning sunlight, she was bathed entirely in the morning light, looking almost too beautiful, even though I've seen that face countless times and am used to it. I still got momentarily dazzled by her radiant smile. When I snapped out of it, she was already holding my arm, leading me to the chair at the dining table. With a hint of amusement in her voice, she said, "What are you daydreaming about? Hurry up and eat breakfast. We'll go shopping together afterward." This apartment is our hastily prepared marital home, and since we just moved in, there are plenty of things we need to buy. There's a large supermarket right next to our apartment, so we pushed a cart and shopped together, discussing what to buy. For a moment, it felt almost like we were a regular couple, but sadly, we are married, yet not really a couple. Suchianshin is wonderful. Falling for her wouldn't be difficult at all. But the problem is that we're too familiar with each other. So familiar that it's hard to feel any sparks. And besides, there's still Liu Ryan between us. I watched Suchianshin as she carefully selected towels and let out a quiet sigh. Whatever, let's just take it one step at a time, I thought. Someday, she meets someone she truly loves. When that time comes, I'll do everything I can to help her gracefully exit this marriage. After all, I'm the one who dragged her into this mess. Our days passed peacefully, and due to the pandemic, we canceled our honeymoon trip. Every day, we went to work separately, and in the evenings, I'd curl up on the living room couch to binge-watch shows, while she sat next to me with her laptop, working. Occasionally, she'd tease me with a few words. Everything seemed just like before, but somehow also not quite the same. Liu Ryan returned after more than 10 days, only to go straight back into quarantine. Returning with him was also Mr. Ma. Hearing this news, I couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. But it was just discomfort, not the same sharp pain as before. After I blocked him, he even used Ma Zuri's phone to call me, telling me he could explain everything, asking me to wait for him. I really got married, the kind with a marriage certificate. Staggered slightly. In disbelief, he muttered, "We haven't even broken up." Yeah, we didn't break up. But when you abandoned me to spend Valentine's Day with Ma Zuri, I considered you dead. His tone became panicked. I really was just on a business trip to Shenzhen. I didn't expect to run into him. I couldn't help but laugh. That's the excuse you came up with after thinking for a month? Do you even believe it yourself? Liu Ryan was at a loss for words. After a moment, he lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry, Yi Chen. Please give me another chance." Just then, Suchianshin's voice came from behind. "Well, isn't this Liu, the great lover?" I turned around, surprised, and asked, "How did you get here so fast?" It had only been about 10 minutes since I called her. I thought I'd have to wait longer. I happened to be nearby, handling some errands. I rushed over as soon as I got your call. She smiled back at me, then raised an eyebrow at Liu Ryan. "What's the plan? Trying to steal someone's partner in broad daylight?" Liu Ryan clenched his fists, his whole body trembling with anger. He snapped back, "You're the one who's stealing, taking advantage of someone's misfortune." Suchianshin smirked and responded with a laugh. "So what? We're already married." Liu Ryan lunged forward, trying to hit her. Suchianshin gently pushed me aside, took the slap head-on before starting to fight back. The two of them had always been rivals since childhood, but in terms of fighting skills, the gap was clear. Soon, Liu Ryan was pinned to the ground, completely overpowered. At that moment, the driver who had tried to extort me earlier saw the commotion and quietly took advantage of the green light to drive off without a word. The three of us were taken to the police station together. What started as a traffic incident turned into an assault case. Coincidentally, the officer handling our dispute was an old acquaintance from the same neighborhood, a guy a few years older than us named Zhao Tia. His gaze shifted back and forth between the three of us, not bothering to hide his gossipy smirk. Well, a street brawl with some beauties involved. So, what's the plan? Settle privately or go through the legal process? Su Qianshan shrugged. Doesn't matter, he threw the first punch. I was just defending myself. No wonder she willingly took that slap. She was setting the stage for self-defense. So, let's hear why the fight broke out. Liu Ryan rolled his eyes. You already know why. Zhao Tia didn't get upset. Instead, he grinned mischievously. A grudge over a stolen love, an unforgivable enmity. Liu Ryan's eyes turned bloodshot. His whole body stiffened with rage. Sensing the tension, Zhao Tia decided not to push him further. And after giving us all a stern lecture, he finally let us go with just a warning. And just like that, the matter seemed to pass. But clearly, Liu Ryan wasn't ready to let it go. He somehow found out where our marital home was located and came pounding on the door late at night. This time, he even brought Ma Zuri along with him. He held the door with his hand, preventing me from closing it, speaking urgently. Yi Chen, there's really nothing between me and him. If you don't believe me, ask him. Ma Zuri stood behind him, hands fidgeting, looking timid. Mr. Yi, Ryan and I are just friends. I was stuck in Shenzhen, under lockdown for a while. Ryan was just concerned about me. He only took me out for a little distraction. Nothing happened between us. I couldn't help but laugh. If I'm not mistaken, you two broke up 5 years ago, didn't you? This friendship has sure lasted a long time, just taking you out to relax. You make it sound so casual, but it had to be on Valentine's Day, right before our wedding. Liu Ryan hurriedly jumped in. I was going to cut things off with him. I figured once we got married, I wouldn't contact him anymore. I didn't expect the pandemic to break out in Sanya. So you're admitting you were in contact before? Liu Ryan's head hung lower and lower. After a few minutes, he finally muttered, No, just once half a year ago. Half a year ago, that was when Su Qianshan mentioned. She ran into Ma Zuri in Shenzhen, wasn't it? I laughed bitterly, acting like it was nothing. But you immediately went to reconnect with him behind my back. I don't know if I should call myself stupid or praise your acting skills. I was trembling with rage and swung my hand, landing a hard slap across his face. Get out, it's not even about love anymore. It's purely about the lies and betrayal. We've known each other for more than 20 years. He could have just told me everything clearly, did it gracefully, and we could have at least stayed friends. After driving the two of them away, I locked myself in my room and had a good cry. I wasted my youth on someone unworthy. I definitely deserved that cry. The next day, Su Qianshan took the day off and took me out to explore the city. We visited the Forbidden City, climbed the Great Wall, and took photos at Tiananmen Square. During the day, we wandered through the alleys of Mao Hanong, immersing ourselves in the rich cultural history left behind. At night, we went to a bar in Hohai, where a singer with small dreadlocks hummed love songs. I swirled my wine glass and casually asked, What is love, Sue? I'm not a heavy drinker. Even in situations where drinking is a must, I only get slightly tipsy. Maybe it was the atmosphere, or maybe the bar's cocktails were too strong. But when I asked that question, I was indeed a bit drunk. Su Qianshan looked at me with a deep, thoughtful gaze. It wasn't until many years later, when I read an article all about love, that I suddenly recalled that enchanting night. She only said one word, and then Su Qianshan and I clapped. The scariest part was, when I woke up, I hadn't blacked out. I clearly remembered everything that happened afterward. After the dreadlocked Cinder left with his guitar, a pole dancer took the center stage. She was beautiful with crimson lips and pearly white teeth. I had no idea how many cocktails I downed by then, but I got up wanting to squeeze into the crowd, only to be pulled back by Su Qianshan. She squinted at me slightly and asked, "Where do you think you're going?" My mind was perfectly clear, but my actions were completely out of control. I mimicked her squint and replied, "Where do you think I'm going?" I wriggled my arm, trying to shake off her grip. I want to go touch her. Where exactly are you to touch? She leaned closer, her voice getting lower. When she finally said him, her tone rose, seductive to the extreme. Her face, I want to touch her face. I giggled, laughing like a character in a well-off country's pixelated train groper scene. Su Qianshan gave a strong tug, and I stumbled right into her arms. She was slightly out of breath, her voice bewitchingly alluring like a temptress. I have a face too, and it's prettier than hers. Wanna try it out? Holding on to the last shred of reason, I suggested, maybe we should head home to test it out. In the end, we didn't make it home. It was too far after all, given the dry weather that night. With sparks ready to ignite, we booked a couples-themed room. We spent the night exploring the depths of life multiple times. The room's central air conditioning was a bit too warm. The next morning, I woke up drenched in heat. Su Qianshan was clinging to me like a koala bear. I reached out to push her away. Her long eyelashes fluttered a few times. Then she opened her eyes and stared at me for a few seconds, before fully waking up. Her fuzzy head rubbed against the crook of my neck. Her voice husky and irresistibly sexy in that morning grogginess. "Don't move, let me sleep a bit longer." I continued to push her, but my body was too weak. I could barely muster the strength to kick her off. Su Qianshan didn't push it further. She let go and obediently lay back on her side. I lay stiffly on the bed, staring at the ceiling, silently annoyed. Alcohol really is something I should steer clear of. Her slender fingers began to gently play with mine, and then she casually said, "Why don't we date?" I didn't know how to respond. Technically, we're already married, so there's no need to be so melodramatic about it. But after years of entanglement with Liu Ryan, to finally reach the end, I do feel a certain exhaustion when it comes to love. I kept staring blankly at the ceiling, softly asking, "Can you give me some time? I've just come out of a relationship, and I truly can't jump into another one right away. I don't want to owe you too much. If possible, I want to completely clear my heart and save it entirely for you." Su Qianshan placed a gentle kiss on my forehead and said, "I'll wait for you." She then told me a long story. A story about an unrequited love. She didn't dare to confess hastily. She said, "Yi Chen, did you know? I was always afraid that one day you'd discover I liked you, and then I'd end up not even having you as a friend. I remember reading something once. If a little girl likes to bully a little boy, it's because she likes him. Turns out it's true." Su Qianshan's long overdue confession made me want to run away. A week later, I moved out of the apartment and went straight to live at the company. Home was definitely out of the question. I was afraid of being interrogated by my parents. When I dragged my suitcase out of the apartment, Su Qianshan hadn't come home from work yet. She'd been busy preparing for a project bid, leading overtime efforts, coming back late every day. I think part of the reason was to give me space to think. Despite her seemingly carefree attitude, she handles things with incredible thoughtfulness. The company has a separate break room with full Wi-Fi coverage and all utilities included. I sent a WeChat message to Lin Yi, telling him that I had moved out. Not long after the message was sent, Su Qianshan's call came through. Her voice was a bit hoarse. "Did you move out? Why did you leave? Did I do something wrong?" I remained silent, and her voice grew softer, ending with a hint of grievance. "Am I really that hard for you to accept?" I replied, "No, I just want to be alone and stay quiet for a while." Yi Chen, don't feel pressured. From the moment I started liking you, I never expected anything in return from you. When you feel better, I'll be waiting for you at home. After hanging up, I pressed my hand against my chest. My heart was racing a bit. The person most thrilled about me moving out was Liu Ryan. He started showing up at our company every few days, but I had him turned away each time, not being able to see me. He began sending gifts every day. I told the front desk to throw them all out. A clean break is a clean break. Any lingering mess. In the days that followed, Su Qianchen stopped contacting me, as if she had vanished from my world. While I felt relieved, there was also a tinge of disappointment. I was hesitating whether to reach out to her. When Liu's mom called, her voice was tearful as she asked, Yi Chen, could you come to the hospital? Xiaoyan was in a car accident. He just regained consciousness and keeps asking to see you. Please, I'm begging you. Can you come see him just for me? A loving elder who had always cared deeply for me was now sobbing and pleading with me. I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Auntie, please don't cry. I'll head over right now. Liu Ryan was wrapped in bandages all over. Thankfully, this time the injuries weren't as severe as a few years ago. Seeing me, he flashed a big smile, but the movement seemed to aggravate his wounds, causing him to wince and lose his expression. You came, he said weakly. I knew you couldn't truly let go. I placed the fruit basket I bought downstairs on the table by his window. You're overthinking it. I only came because of your mom's request to check what happened this time. So where did you crash this time? His eyes began to shift nervously, and his voice lacked conviction as he spoke. I got distracted and accidentally hit a roadside barrier. This was his typical behavior when lying, a slight nervous twitch. After his near-fatal accident years ago, he's always been extra cautious while driving. So the excuse of being distracted wasn't convincing. There's only one possible reason he did this. He's trying the same old tricks. I sighed, looking at him seriously, and said, you're playing with your life. Do you realize that? His voice trembled. Yi Chen. I didn't give him a chance to continue. A few years ago, when you had that accident, I could take care of you, because we were friends then. Childhood buddies who grew up together, who hadn't betrayed me, hadn't deceived me. Even if you lashed out at me, it was because you loved someone else. But now it's different. You betrayed our love, even our marriage. There's no going back. We're done. It's over. Think about your parents and stop doing such foolish things from now on. Don't do anything foolish like this again in the future. After saying that, I let out a long breath. My tone softened a bit. I won't be coming to see you anymore. Take care of yourself. On the way home, I sent a message to Lin Yi. I was sure that I no longer loved Liu Ryan. Lin Yi responded quickly. He never deserved you anyway. Bro, don't let your past relationship hold you back. You deserve to be loved. Every guy who takes life seriously deserves to be loved. I turned off my screen, closed my eyes, and tilted my head back to feel the September sunlight. Today's sun felt especially comforting. Later that night, as if she had vanished from the world, my legal wife, Su Qianchen, suddenly gave me a call. When I answered, it was a somewhat tipsy voice on the other end. Boss, is that you? The boss lady is drunk. Could you come pick her up? She gave me the address of a KTV. When I arrived, a young girl was anxiously waiting at the entrance. The moment she saw me, she smiled and hurried over. Sir, you're finally here. Miss Su is inside. I'll take you to her. Surprised, I asked, you know who I am? She scratched her head, revealing a pair of small dimples. Miss Su has had your photo on her desk for years. Since we've worked together, I've occasionally visited her company, but I never noticed it before. As she led me inside, she kept chatting with me. Miss Su hasn't slept much these past few days because of this project, and now she's had so much to drink tonight. I wonder if her body can handle it. But at least she successfully secured the bid today. So all the hard work paid off. I paused for a moment. So she didn't contact me because she was busy? I pushed open the door to the private room. The moment I entered, I immediately spotted Suchianshin sitting quietly in the corner. She was unusually calm. I walked over to pull her up, but she swiftly dodged. When she realized it was me, she threw herself at me, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist, burying her face in my chest. She mumbled, "Honey, why did you take so long? I've been waiting for you forever." It was obvious she was heavily intoxicated. The whole place was lively and buzzing. Everyone had probably drunk quite a bit. Seeing her clinging onto me, the crowd around us started cheering and teasing. I patted her head, awkwardly saying goodbye to the group. "I'll take her home now." Drunk Suchianshin was surprisingly obedient. When I asked her to let go, she immediately did, but insisted on holding my hand stubbornly. She asked me, "Honey, where are we going?" I answered, "Home." "Our home?" Her eyes sparkled, catching the light, like little stars dancing inside them. I found myself captivated by her gaze. "Yes, our home." I moved back into our marital home. Suchianshin fully embraced the role of a wife. On her way back from work, she would buy ingredients I liked, and I started learning to cook dishes she enjoyed. On weekends, she loved staying up late with me, then sleeping in the next morning with her arms wrapped around me. Turns out marriage doesn't need grand gestures. A peaceful, warm, and simple life is enough. Liu's mom called me a few more times, asking me to visit Liu Ryan again, but I refused each time. I couldn't let him hold on to any false hope that we might have a chance. A few months later, Suchianshin found out she was pregnant. I was overjoyed like a child, hugging her while laughing and crying. She teased me, "Is it really that big of a deal?" "Of course it's a big deal. This is our child you're giving me." I held her close, thinking to myself that life is long, and walking down this path together seems pretty good after all. As the Lunar New Year approached, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Since it was a local Beijing number, I decided to answer. To my surprise, it was Liu Ryan, who I hadn't heard from in a long time. "I heard Suchianshin is pregnant." I casually responded with a simple then asked her, "What do you want?" "If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." "Don't hang up, Yi Chen. Please don't hang up just yet." Before she could finish her sentence, I hung up the phone and immediately blocked the number. Afterward, I locked my phone and tossed it aside. "Yi Chen, your son wants to eat hot pot. Stop it, it's clearly our daughter." I gently touched Suchianshin's rounded belly, carefully guiding her as we headed out. "Sweetheart, go change your clothes. We're heading out for hot pot." Side story, I'm Liu Ryan. Maybe you could call me a bit of a heartbreaker. Next door, there's this guy 2 years older than me, who was always fond of sticking around me. His name is Yi Chen. I could never figure out why he liked clinging to me so much, when he clearly got along better with Suchianshin. Yet I never really liked how he played with Suchianshin, but I didn't tell anyone. Because if I did, people would think I was petty. The adults used to tease us a lot, calling me his little bride. If I hadn't met Mazuri, I wouldn't have minded marrying him. But I met him anyway. Mazuri was my university classmate. Unlike Yi Chen's charming and likable appearance, Mazuri had a striking handsomeness that could captivate you at first glance. Isn't there a saying that goes like this? Cute is worthless in the face of sexy. I deeply agreed with that sentiment. If Yi Chen was an angel, then Mazuri was a devil. He really had his ways with me. I was completely captivated by him. After countless times of him pleading and acting cute, I finally took him to Yi Chen's coming-of-age ceremony. The boy who always greeted me with a bright smile and eyes full of light was stunned for the first time. I felt a slight pang in my heart, but it was just a tiny bit. The dazed Yi Chen was quickly led away by Su Qianchen. Meanwhile, I was dragged outside to the garden by my parents and scolded harshly. They thought I had ruined one of the most important days of Yi Chen's life. I had anticipated that my parents would oppose my relationship with Ma Zuri, but I didn't expect their opposition to be so extreme. To break us up, after persuasion didn't work, my mom resorted to threatening suicide, swallowing pills, trying to hang herself. All sorts of drama. After multiple attempts, I grew tired of it all. When she was sent to the hospital once again after slashing her wrists, I finally directed all my pent-up anger at Yi Chen, who was anxiously waiting nearby. His eyes reddened in disbelief as he looked at me, and then he walked out of the hospital without looking back. That was the only time I ever lost my temper at him. Honestly, I regretted it immediately after, but I was too proud to apologize. Yi Chen was really mad this time. He even moved straight into the school dormitory. Meanwhile, I got a beating from my grandfather with a stick. All these years, Yi Chen had always followed behind me like a little shadow, never causing trouble, always so obedient and sensible. After that incident, Yi Chen completely ignored me. It was clear he was genuinely angry. I admit the things I said were too hurtful. I even bought gifts and went to his school to see him, but he refused to meet me. I hadn't realized before that this guy was so hard to appease, with Yi Chen being impossible to placate on one side, and Ma Zuri throwing tantrums on the other side because I was giving too much attention to another guy. I was caught in a mess. I barely got any sleep for several days in a row. The consequence of driving while exhausted was that I got into a car accident, a really serious one. Apparently, I was just dragged out of the car by a kind passerby, and not long after, the car caught fire. You could say I barely escaped with my life. Over a month later, Ma Zuri broke up with me. He was crying, saying my family still wouldn't accept him, and he couldn't take it anymore. It must have been my mom causing trouble for him again. Even though I didn't want to let go, I agreed. I didn't even know if I'd ever walk again. Why drag someone else down with me? After Ma Zuri left, Yi Chen started visiting me every day. I was dealing with both physical and emotional pain, so it was natural that my temper was bad. Yet he didn't seem to mind at all, still coming by daily to keep me company. Because of the severity of my injuries, I had to undergo multiple surgeries. Every time I woke up from anesthesia, he was there by my side. The most painful part was rehabilitation. There were so many times I wanted to give up, but it was always his gentle encouragement that kept me going. Seeing everything he did, it's impossible not to be moved. That's when I thought, he's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. After I recovered, I confessed to him, but he rejected me. He said he didn't need me to repay him with my affection. I smiled and responded, "It's not about repaying you, but about a lifetime together." He tilted his head and mumbled, "A lifetime is really long. You better think it through carefully." His expression was so adorably handsome. I pursued Yi Chen for 2 whole years before he finally believed that I truly loved him. After being with Yi Chen for over 6 months, I heard news about Ma Zuri from Su Qianchen. To be honest, I wronged him back then too. On a whim, I sent a message to his old number. To my surprise, he hadn't changed it. We added each other on WeChat and began chatting frequently. As for Yi Chen, he never checks my phone, so I wasn't worried he'd find out. Ma Zuri often sent me photos. His body was even better than it was 5 years ago, and his conversations were much more flirtatious. After a few months of chatting, the pandemic broke out in Shenzhen, and he got quarantined. Honestly, I was still concerned about Ma Zuri. Once the quarantine was lifted, Ma Zuri messaged me, asking if I could visit him. I hesitated. My wedding with Yi Chen was approaching. We had already planned to register on Valentine's Day. I worried about the timing, but Ma Zuri knew exactly how to manipulate me. He knew how to tug at the right strings. Yi Chen is too well-behaved, always gentle and considerate around me. But we've been together for so long. And the most we've done is kiss. And even that was just a simple peck. Calculating the time, I figured I could make it back before Valentine's Day. So I told Yi Chen I had a business trip to Shenzhen. As expected, he didn't suspect a thing. I spent a wild days there. And when I was ready to return to Beijing, Ma Zuri begged me, pitifully asking if I could accompany him to Sanya. I told him I had to go home. Yi Chen is waiting for me, I thought. He said he knows I'm getting married, and after the wedding, he won't bother me anymore. I have so many Valentine's days ahead to spend with Yi Chen, so why not give this one to Ma Zuri? When he said this, tears glistened in his eyes. I just couldn't refuse. I called Yi Chen, telling him that something came up and I might be delayed by a couple of days. I assured him that I would still make it in time for the wedding. As always, he was considerate, only reminding me to stay safe. We booked tickets to Sanya and spent a romantic Valentine's Day there. Just as we were preparing to return, the pandemic broke out in Sanya. I panicked. No one knew how long the lockdown would last. The only certainty was that I wouldn't make it to my own wedding. I called Yi Chen again, suggesting we postpone the wedding. What I didn't expect was for Ma Zuri to suddenly say something, making me hastily end the call. But I was sure Yi Chen heard it. I told him to wait for me patiently, that I could explain everything, though I didn't even know how to explain it myself. He's so hard to appease. The last time I upset him, it took years to make things right. This time, who knows if he'll ever forgive me? A sudden fear crept over me. The next day, I should have been standing in a white gown, watching Yi Chen walk toward me step by step. But instead, I was stuck in a hotel room, with all my messages to Yi Chen disappearing into the void. Frustrated, I opened WeChat, ready to send him another message to calm him down. But then I saw a friend had sent me a short video. In the video, where I should have been standing was Su Qianchen. I frantically called him, but he kept rejecting my calls over and over again. Out of options, I called my mom, hoping she could stop the wedding. He must be angry at me, deliberately trying to get back at me. It has to be that. He and Su Qianchen? How could that be possible? I smashed everything in the room I could get my hands on. Ma Zuri tried to comfort me with a hug, but I shoved him away. It's all your fault if you hadn't insisted on coming to Sanya. I should be at my wedding today, marrying Yi Chen. He seemed frightened by my outburst, and didn't dare approach me again. The 10 days of quarantine in Sanya nearly drove me insane. Yi Chen had blocked me. I asked my mom to help me, but she just scolded me for being foolish and refused to get involved. I couldn't eat or sleep. My mind was consumed with thoughts. Would Yi Chen really leave me for good? I hadn't realized until now how deep my feelings for him had grown. After more than 10 days in quarantine, when I returned to Beijing, I brought Ma Zuri with me. I thought if he explained things to Yi Chen himself, it might be more believable. But Yi Chen told me he had already registered his marriage with Su Qianchen. All my explanations seemed so pointless in front of him. Not only did he not believe me, he also found out that I had been in contact with Ma Zuri before. He kicked me out. It was clear that he was furious. I tried every possible way to ask for his forgiveness, but nothing worked. With no other options, I decided to take a desperate risk. I intentionally drove my car into a roadside barrier, but he saw right through my plan. He lectured me and then left, resolute in his decision. I guess this is truly the end for us. In the end, I lost the boy whose eyes were once filled with only me.